One question.
Let's fire it.
It was on our community. Let's Get to Cooking community page. Someone was asking, they're cooking a pork butt. Fat side up, fat side down. What's your preference? I know what I like to do.
Well, am I scoring it or not scoring it?
They didn't say anything about competition. So, you're talking about scoring the fat cap.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's say you're scoring it.
I'm cooking it fat up if I'm scoring it.
Why do you?
Because I like it the way that fat kind of renders down and makes these little bites that are delicious, and you can pull them out like plugs and eat that fat cap. Oh, it's so good. It's so cooking it unwrapped the whole time and cooking it like that, and that fat renders and some of it gets a little crispy, but it makes these little nuggets of bites.
When you
top.
talk about scoring it, you're going like
you make a crosshatch. Like you take the pork butt and go at an angle, go across one way, then rotate the butt and then go back across those, and it makes like a little diamond pattern on it. And as those cooks, first it lets you open it up and put some rub all down in there in those little crevices. But it helps that fat render more because you've broke it. It's not just one solid piece of fat. And it renders down and it just makes a delicious little morsel of a bite. Now,
what if you don't score it?
If you don't score it, I'm probably going to lean to a fat down because that fat, it depends. I've always said this. It depends on the heat source on your smoker too. If your heat's primarily coming from the bottom, it's nice to have that buffer to keep it from drying the pork butt out, to have it right there on the bottom side. But if your heat's coming from the top, depending on how your heat radiates in your smoker, it's nice to have the fat up top. But I also like it flipped over to protect that bacon, what I call the bacon meat, or those tubes that are up under there. Because when you cook them fat up, and the fat's on top, it seems to want to dry them out. They're not as good. But if you flip them over, they stay just covered in that fat that's rendering in there. When you pull that meat out, it strings and it's perfect, and it's the best bite on a pork butt. If you've never had that, you need to look for pork butts with that big false cap on it. Usually if it's got a big layer of fat on top, it's got a pretty decent false cap on it, but you can see it through the package a lot of times. And sometimes it only covers like a little corner of the butt, and sometimes it covers the majority of that fat surface. And it'd be like a thick layer of fat, that false cap meat, and then another layer underneath that. And the meat that's in between that sandwich layer, that false cap meat, that's what I'm talking about when I talk about bacon. It's like pork belly cooked. I mean, just it's perfect. Oh, it's so good.
If it's cooked just right, you can take your hand and just skim that fat cap off the top.
And get right to it.
And slide right underneath and just pull that bacon up.
And when you cook it over, like fat down, it really helps that. You got to cook it to where it's done and rendered. If you cook it up top, it can dry it out if you don't have enough fat on those butts. So it just really depends. Either way is good. But